Welcome to Slator Pod 32, the language industry podcast that is brought to you this time from the beautiful mountain town of Locks and London. Hi, Esther.
Yes, London. Hello, Florian.
All right, we got a lot of interesting stories today. As usual, it's been a packed week, and we managed, despite all the remoteness. I'm even more remote than usual. I'm very remote. I'm in a mountain town. Although it's a little crowded, it's interesting that the domestic tourism in Switzerland is taking off. It's like some of those mountain towns are not mountain towns, but like in the south, they're actually complaining that there's too many people in some of these hotspots. And I'm not sure where the Brits going on holiday, except the ones that are afraid of quarantine and coming back from Spain. Or
some of exactly. Some of them tried to go to Spain. I think some of them managed, but then obviously now we've kind of gone back to a quarantine situation. I don't know, a little bit within the UK, I suppose. I think to Greece potentially. I think that's open to us. I know I've got a couple of friends who've headed off to France and things, but I think generally people are not going anywhere right now.
But like within the UK, are they traveling a lot? Because here it's like literally, I mean, the mountains are full. The southern Canton is full. Except some of the mountain towns that specialize, quote unquote, on like Chinese tourists or Indian tourists, but like all the ones that have like a domestic audience are just packed. And
I think we've had some quite nice weather. So definitely some of the beaches like Brighton Beach, and some kind of up north, and also some of the lakes, national parks and things have been quite busy. But then they're trying to sort of dissuade people from going too far, really, even within the UK.
Okay.
To hotspots, really, because you definitely don't want to have too many hotspots right now.
Do you have to wear masks outside or not really?
Not outside. No, we now have to wear them in shops and on public transport. Yeah, they're starting as well. The case numbers are going up again, and now I think we're going to have to wear it in shops as well. It's just like I listen to all these US podcasts, and they keep mentioning that people like are required technically to like wear masks outside, like when they're going hiking. Okay.
So that's just.
I don't think that hasn't come in here. It might do, but it hasn't yet.
All right, let's talk about today's agenda. We're going to talk about the Aussie Navy recruiting quote unquote crypto linguists. Then Salesforce open sourced a bunch of data that was very interesting. The UK Crown Commercial Service, that's like a procurement organization in the UK that's running a giant language services contract, language technology. And then we're going to talk about a few financial results from the LSP space. We got TransPerfect that reported this week, Straker, the smallish Aussie listed LSP reported, and then LanguageLine, which is part of a bigger French conglomerate now, also reported, or the French conglomerate reported. And so we pick up we looked at some of the figures around LanguageLine and the OPI business, over the phone interpreting business generally. But what's going on and the Australian Navy? Is it the Navy or the Army?
It's the Navy.
It's the Navy.
The Royal Australian Navy.
Royal Australian.
Royal, yes. They're, like you said, they're looking to hire crypto linguists or cryptologic linguists, and 40 of them within the coming year. Yes, so that's sort of the headline, I suppose. But they're trying to obviously attract people into the roles, and they've kind of come up with some quite interesting techniques for recruiting. So they came up with like a digital marketing or digital campaign that was highlighting the need specifically for human translators. And the way they did that kind of was to poke a bit of fun at Google Translate in a couple of their videos. So kind of amusing, I suppose.
I think they used a Beyonce video or something. No, not Beyonce video, Beyonce text or like a song lyrics.
Her song lyrics, to sort of translate them and see how that would come across using Google Translate with the call to action. Yeah, but no, I mean, aside from that, I mean, I think it sounds like a very cool job as well. So these crypto linguists, they will be intercepting, analyzing, and translating foreign languages to support the defense operations for the country. So actually, they even get to go out and be stationed with the Navy fleets.
Okay.
and at fleet headquarters and other sort of strategic environments, they've said. So pretty varied role as well, like lots of kind of learning and CPD ongoing. And what was I going to say? The salary they're offering is around 85,000 Aussie dollars after training. So it's about 61,000 US dollars plus a generous pension scheme as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think before you said that, I think we had a quick disconnect there, but I think this is the first time this ever happened.
Yeah,
so
something went beep. So I was like, hello, am I still here? But yes,
yeah, I think you were
so.
gone for a couple of seconds. Let's plow ahead. It's we're
live.
$85,000, so 60,000 US dollars, and then the pension scheme. In terms of the languages, I would just off the top of my head, I would say it's there would be a lot of Chinese, but what are the language combinations?
Well, I don't know whether they explicitly said within the job ads, but I mean, in terms of the general makeup of freelancers within, I think there was an Australian association survey recently that said like the top languages were Chinese, as you said, and about sort of 26% of people responding to the survey had Chinese as a first native language, followed by English, Arabic, Vietnamese, and also Persian.
All right, but that's the makeup of the
that's the linguist pool.
Okay, the pool. Yeah, so for those 40, we don't know what languages they're recruiting for.
Not explicitly. I don't think so.
Maybe not yet.
I imagine it's a mix. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, before they're going to start recruiting, they're probably going to have to specify what language, because otherwise it's going to be hard to apply.
I mean, if they're hiring 40 people, I imagine it's going to be a mix of sort of everything that that's present within the country, really.
We're going to run this story today, but we're also going to. I think we should dig into a little more. I like what cryptologic linguists. Linguist. That sounds like a cool job.
It does. And they were talking about things like software manipulation, analytical techniques, radio wave propagation. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Lots to learn aside from just another language.
While you're sailing.
Yes. On the ocean.
Lots to learn. That's also what I felt when I reviewed the piece around Salesforce's open sourcing of XML tagged NMT data together with Seema, who wrote the article. It's just there's so much research still coming out on the NMT, and this one was, I think, it particularly from an editorial point of view, I think we selected it because also Teresa Marshall was mentioned as one of the authors, and she, she's the VP localization at Salesforce, and she's been in industry, for a long time. So it's rare that you're seeing like language industry people mentioned in some of these research papers, and this one had a practical application also because it was actually data that was open sourced on GitHub. But you prepared this, so please go ahead and explain why this matters and what it is. Yeah.
I shall do my best, yes. So, I mean, XML tags, as you've said. So the premise is that tagging, including XML tags, so training NMT with XML tags can improve translation accuracy when you're working with text data. And this specific data set has, as you said, been made available on GitHub, but it's specifically focused on Salesforce's help documentation, so the online help documentation, which actually they've been translating for at least 15 years, but the last 15 years has been professionally translated and maintained by the same LSP, which I thought was interesting. And sort of, so I mean, I imagine that they feel like the quality is pretty high.
Pretty good,
to be able to do that. So they've got a data set which covers 17 languages, and any of them can be used as a source or a target. And you've got about 7,000 pairs of XML files per language pair.
And that's all available on GitHub, right?
So it's all available. It's all publicly available. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, and we spoke a little bit about this before, didn't we? I mean, we were talking about sort of XML tags and how that can technically be, I suppose, a bit of a problem. I mean, for anyone in translation, but for kind of machines and NMT anyway. So kind of building that into the data set will actually help NMT be able to translate that kind of text, which does have tags in it.
But it's not just, I mean, it's not, it gives more context to it. Is that right? So you have additional, I mean, the tags provide more context. So it's not just click here, but it's kind of click here in this particular context.
Yeah,
web
so things like
application.
formatting as well.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the issue is that when you've got a plain text data set, so a data set that doesn't include these XML tags, it doesn't reflect the fact that it's not really going to perform in the same way on a data set that does have those tags in it.
Oh, okay, understand.
Yeah, because you need the tags both in the source and the target for it to be, sound, for it to work well on the web.
Yeah.
So you have to somehow find a way to keep them in, but obviously have them in the relevant places, like for formatting, for underlining, and for whatever else you want to do on that.
Did they run some tests with evaluators on this, or?
Yeah, they did. So I mean, I think it was pretty mixed, I suppose. I mean, they said that 50% of the results were complete or useful in post editing. So there were human evaluators who said that 50% of the translation results were basically satisfactory or would help a human to translate more quickly. But translators still spent a significant amount of time verifying the output and correcting any errors from it. So I think the takeaway here is still, well, yes, use NMT, improve the data set, but it should still be used for the purpose of helping human translators, not raw.
Cool. Yeah, and it seems to be a project that has some visibility within Salesforce because our tweet was retweeted by Salesforce's CTO. So I just saw that yesterday. So it got a bunch of retweets anyway. Seems like people like the open source aspect of it, but then when I looked at some of the people who retweeted and I saw Salesforce's CTO, I'm like, yeah, okay, thank you very much. He's not a big tweeter, so we feel flattered.
So there you go.
Yeah. All right. From California software to UK Crown commercial, the procurement, the public sector in the UK. Woo! But hey, these are big contracts. It keeps lots of LSPs alive. And what happened there? I think we covered this contract 4 years ago. Now it's up for renewal, but they're improving the structure of it. And you listened in on a call this week. So.
Yeah. I was super impressed, actually. I mean, it's the first time I've joined a call kind of that nature, but it was between, like you said, the Crown Commercial Service and one specific, what do they call that, a contract or a procurement manager, I suppose, at the CCS, who was giving a presentation about kind of the previous contract, how that had all run, and the changes that they're planning on making to the upcoming contract. So we did cover this piece, I think, the news of at least the upcoming tender, I think about a month or so ago, and they had said, we're going to be running a webinar for industry people, for people who are potentially going to bid for these contracts, to take feedback and to give you updates about what's changing. So yeah, there were nearly 80 people on the call, and it was a 2 to 3 hour call. A lot of presentation, from the procurement manager there. It was talking through some changes to the existing framework contracts. I think a few things, maybe kind of interesting in terms of knowing what kind of trends are happening, like you said, within the public sector, which is a major buyer, especially in the UK, major buyer of translation and interpreting. So he firstly said that the previous contract, so the one that is expiring, had a total spend of around £64 million between 2016 when it started and 2020. I'm not too sure up to when in 2020. But there's now a new one that's going to be put out, a new contract to replace it for translation and interpreting and also non-spoken languages. And that is going to be worth, or the contract value is, I think, £110 million.
I'm going to just pause you there for a second. So
please do.
The 4 year, the 2016 to 2020, £64 million, that was actual spend. That's looking back.
That was actual spend, yeah.
And then 110.
And he broke it down, yeah.
And then the 110 is more kind of a ceiling?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's an estimate, I think, going forward of what they intend to spend.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I mean, he broke down some of the figures as well in terms of, how that 64 million had been spent. So by what kind of government entities. I think that was sort of the interesting data, and on which lots of the contracts specifically had been the most amount of money had been spent So just I suppose a couple of points on what he'd said is going to be changing. So one thing I kind of picked out there was phone. There's a lot or a sort of subcontract which is specifically for phone and video interpreting, and they had on the last contract they just had one supplier delivering the phone and video interpreting lot. They're now going to increase that to 3. To make it more competitive. I don't know, potentially they intend to spend a bit more within that as well. He was talking about rationalizing non-spoken languages, so basically splitting out kind of the Braille and sign language and those kind of services out from the what we would think of as translation and interpreting. And I mean, I think one thing that came out from it as well, he was talking about an open book policy, so implementing an open book policy on the rate of pay to interpreters and translators to sort of increase the level of transparency there. He said they won't be evaluating LSPs on the basis of the rate of pay, but it's good to introduce it for transparency.
I think one interesting point is that you're saying they're going for phone and video interpreting, going from 1 supplier to 3.
Yes.
Was that the big word that won that? Do we know? Or at least took it over? We don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think at least in the last contract, it's been quite a reasonably small lot compared to sort of the other spend. I mean, he was also talking about sort of the use of video in particular during coronavirus and how that's becoming a sort of more mature option now for buyers, for the public sector buyers.
I just wonder what the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wonder if that's a wise decision to go from 1 to 3, because basically this is all about scheduling, right? You have a pool, you qualify the pool, and then it's about scheduling and availability. So going from 1 to 3, how would that help? It just makes it more complex.
Yeah. So I think one thing he was saying is that, and I need to double check this, but I think they were saying that for the video, they're not doing on demand. It's actually going to be pre-booked, because there was some feedback that on-demand video was too difficult really for suppliers to deliver, particularly within sort of the scope of languages that are required in the UK. So I think it's going to be more pre-booked. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, it's an option, it's a strategy, isn't it? And I don't know what they'll kind of find once they've tested that. But I suppose it does give them more options.
Video interpreting fully on demand is really hard to pull off. I mean, you have to have a very kind of, I mean, you have to have a lot of bookings. You have to have resources on standby all the time, probably almost fully like employed or in some type of retainer, and then they're just, available whenever you need them. You have to have probably a fairly defined use case as well. I mean, if you have all kinds of random clients and use cases and users, how can you have people on standby in front of a camera just waiting for a call to get dialed in? That's really hard to deliver unless you have massive scale. So, and we'll speak about interpreting later on in the financial results with more the OPI, the traditional one with LanguageLine. Yeah, interesting, right? Big call, 80 people. Did you get to see who was on the call?
Yeah, I did. Some of them had full names. Some of them. Some of them didn't include their full names, but I mean, there were
Zoom?
people from.
Sorry, was it Zoom? Was it Zoom or what was it?
I think it might have been WebEx. I can't really remember. Yeah, it was one of the two. I mean, but people from sort of the LSPs that you'd expect. Most of them sort of the UK ones, the public sector ones. So no real surprises. Some of the big ones were there. Super agencies, most of them.
Cool. Well, let's follow up on that and see if we can write a story about it as well. Moving on to the top dog in this industry, TransPerfect. Again, just in terms of revenue, there's other ones that are bigger in terms of market cap, etc. But in terms of revenue, they're big, and they posted results for the second quarter. Heads up. Now we're going to talk a bit about financials and financial results from some of the LSPs. So if you're interested, please stay on. It's now reporting season. There's also SDL coming up. I got a call scheduled with them. I think in a week or so.
Nice.
Once they release the results. RWS probably follows as well. So Q2 TransPerfect generated revenues of like almost $200 million, like $198.7 million. You add that up, so it's roughly a $800 million revenue company now. It's up nearly 4% on the same quarter last year. but like what they call like for like organic growth, like if they're taking out the acquisitions, it was roughly flat. Still this is a good performance for what was probably the worst quarter in economic history since the Second World War, or even before that. I think today the US's GDP figures came out, and it was like annualized like minus 32%. And so
okay.
on the quarter itself, it's roughly minus 10%. It's just like the Market Watch headline was like a Titanic hit, or like a Titanic negative number. So if you can, have roughly flat revenues during a period of unprecedented global turmoil, that speaks to the company, but in this case also about the industry. In the first quarter, they grew 40%, so it's a quite a contrast. I mean, a lot of these LSPs had a great start. And
14,
then
14.
14, yeah, 14.
Oh, okay.
And then
you said 40, and then I was like, surely not.
No, it was 14, sorry.
No, I heard
14.
I heard 40, but 14, yeah.
So they wouldn't comment on like individual units, like the life sciences business. I was very interested to hear more about life sciences and how the whole clinical trial situation has been affecting them. But wouldn't comment on banking or finance. They did specifically mention that media held firm. What we've spoken about many times now. The media localization sector. They said interestingly that they've seen a subtitling move towards subtitling, replacing some of the dubbing, because of the disruption to the traditional dubbing supply chain. But then they also said that this kind of blended hybrid model where you have in studio and remote recording, remote recording, we spoke many times now with Zoo and these types of solutions. Dubbing. This is the future. It's not just like a pandemic fix, but it's something that's more long-term. Also, I think we did, not sure if probably couple podcasts, maybe 3 podcasts ago, we spoke about Zoo and their remote system. So we got some feedback that it's actually not meant to be just from home dubbing, but it's basically, yes, you can dub from home, but it's more kind of what they call a platform-based approach rather than a location-based approach, right? So you can have people from different locations work together on a joint project, like, actors, directors, they can work together from any approved location instead of having to all go to the same studio. At least that's what I understand it. So you can work from a big recording studio, you can work from home, but it's not meant to be just, okay, we're going to be remote at home and that's all there is, right?
Yeah.
And TransPerfect's in that space now as well. I mean, they did acquire a few studios, and I think they must have a remote solution by now as well. And on the tech side, they got their global link, like that's their TMS, right? That they're selling standalone to big localization buyers. They said they reprioritized features, that facilitate, well, guess what? Online collaboration and remote working. No surprise there. In the VRI, video remote interpreting, same. They pushed in there, and they also said that they're again pushing harder into the data labeling and what they call like AI support services. That's in direct competition with Lionbridge, Appen. I think Appen is. Let me just pull this up. They continue to just be.
You're looking at the share price.
I'm just pulling this up right now. It's not. They're at
drum roll.
No, that $4.4 billion market cap in Aussie
in
dollars.
USD.
So it's probably like $3+ billion. So they're doing very well on this data labeling and AI support services, right?
Yeah, because they were at like 2 billion or something, weren't they? Like last year or something, weren't they?
Yeah, when we started writing about them, they were at like 100 million. So they're up like 40x or 50x. So that's why a lot of the LSPs are interested in going into this business, because it's managing crowds, it's invoicing at scale.
I got one of those emails today, like a speculative marketing email from an LSP, basically like somebody I'd not heard of before, but they were saying, oh yeah, we do speech data collection.
There you go.
Plus, plus translation, etc. as normal. I was like, oh right, okay. There we go.
Yeah. I think this has really gone through the whole, the ranks, right? It's coming. Yeah. I think Lionbridge has been in this business for a long, long time, even before the whole Appen hype and TransPerfect also. But now, when there's a company that's leveraging this so successfully, like Appen does, then you want to highlight it a bit as well. Yeah. In terms of M&A, we asked about how does the whole pandemic influence pricing for M&A, and they said it hasn't really changed their model. so far. So, they're still looking at the same, probably pricing strategy, etc. All right, moving on to Straker, a much smaller Aussie-based or New Zealand-based Aussie listed, hence, sharing their results. Can you just give us some of the highlights? We don't have to dwell too long on that, but there were a few interesting notes there.
Yeah, so I think they had already given us an update, or an update to investors, I should say more accurately, I think around late April, that they had sort of a decline in, I think, sales orders, they said, of around 7%. But in this quarterly update now, they said that June 2020 saw a recovery across all business segments. And that in particular media localization and also enterprise had been doing quite strongly during the period, and are expected to continue to grow. Yeah.
Okay.
So they had also made some progress versus last year when they used this metric, receipts from customers, which is slightly different from revenue. But they said that was up around 13% to roughly $4.6 million US. But they are still loss-making if you look at their metrics as well.
The markets liked it. Their shares were up 10% on the news. So looks like a couple of big institutional buyers came in and bought some shares. So that's good.
They were go ahead.
No, sorry, go.
I was going to say, which I found interesting, that they had been using FrontLab software. So FrontLab was an InDesign system that was then acquired by LanguageWire, I think in 2017.
Yeah.
Yes, 2018, 2017, can't remember. 2017, yeah. So Straker had been using FrontLab as part of their system, but they have replaced that with proprietary tech now this quarter.
Yeah, you don't want to
be... What were you going to say?
No, it's okay. You don't want to be. They don't want to be relying on like a direct competitor, which LanguageWire for certain accounts certainly is. There was also some restructuring going on. Yeah, we haven't mentioned that, right? No. So it's 100. They had 181 full-time staff in March 2020, and now they have 134. Yeah. So it's almost like on a small level. You cut staff and your stock goes up. So I'm not sure if that's typical of the broader language industry. It seems like a fairly aggressive layoff. I mean,
we can't say for sure they're all layoffs, to be honest, because they said they had done a 15% reduction, whereas that I think is slightly more than that.
15 is still a lot. 15%.
Yeah, but I mean the difference between the figures that we just said is more than.
It's way more,
yeah. So I don't know. We can't say for sure that all of that is a result of redundancies. I suppose could just be churn or non-replacement, non-backfilling.
Probably not much churn right now. Who's quitting these days? It's a daring gamble if you quit, unless you're in some crazy space. All right. Finalizing this with LanguageLine, they're owned by giant French company Teleperformance, like an outsourcing company. The parent company is worth like roughly $15 billion on the French stock exchange. It's been outperforming strongly. They just posted half-year revenues. The parent company, again, 2.6 billion euros in revenues and $250 million in EBITDA. So very profitable, very large. And they project revenue of around 7 billion by 2022, including what they said, acquisitions in high value added services. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because I continue to think that Teleperformance is kind of a dark horse for like a major LSP acquisition. Like they, that LanguageLine deal, that was like 1.6 billion. It was literally, it's the biggest LSP deal ever. They did four years ago. And they certainly have the capital and the knowledge to and the potential interest and business. It would make a lot of business sense for them to buy one of the major LSPs. So, who knows? Maybe they're looking at the space. Also, they provided, an update on LanguageLine, which they again acquired about 4 years ago. And that they don't break out LanguageLine specifically, but it's under a unit called Specialized Services. They said the revenues dropped by nearly 10% to like 300 million in the first 6 months. But that's not because of LanguageLine, but it's because they're actually running a visa application service, which basically evaporated completely since April. I mean, there's no travel, there's no visas to process. They did highlight that, again, while the visa application business dropped off a cliff, LanguageLine, they said, quote unquote, overcame the impact of the health crisis in the healthcare segment and returned to strong growth in June. And they said that the initial obstacle was the postponement of many non-essential medical procedures in the US at the height of the crisis, right? So there's just less traffic at the hospitals, which apparently now came back again. And they also highlighted that it was very smooth for LanguageLine to continue to work because almost all of these 11,000 interpreters they're using are working from home anyway. So there was no kind of operational issue there. And they also said that LanguageLine continues to generate high EBITDA margins. So maybe that $1.6 billion they spent on it actually was money well spent in the long term. All right. So that was time well spent on a podcast. We're hitting 31 minutes. So let's wrap for today. Wish you all a fantastic weekend and goodbye from Laux, Switzerland.
And bye from London.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.